Welcome back to First Shift, and it is that time of year. The trade deadline is coming up. I believe it's next Friday, March the 7th, and with that, we bring in NHL Network insider Elliotte Friedman, who will be a very busy man over the next several days. He's already been busy probably for the last couple of months because there's been a lot of trades. Let's get to it, Elliotte. Let me ask you about the situation with Rantanen in Carolina. I heard you reporting on that Carolina made a very good offer. I think this is a really tough spot for the Canes if Rantanen wants to wait it out. So what's the latest, and what do you make of this situation?
Well, I think right now that basically the Hurricanes are waiting for Rantanen to give them any kind of indication of which way he's leaning. And I've likened it to a breakup, right? Rantanen was shocked by the trade, and sometimes you just need time. It's only human to collect your thoughts. And, the Hurricanes have been on the road quite a bit. They're on the road right now. They play in Montreal tonight. And there's also the Four Nations. So he really hasn't had a chance to get a grasp of what Carolina is all about and what it's like there. And you see the numbers. The production hasn't been there yet. The underlying numbers have been pretty good, but the production hasn't been there yet. And the thing that the Hurricanes have as their advantage is, number one, they have him now, and number two, unless they relinquish control of the situation, guys, they're the one team that can offer him 8 years.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, let's just assume, and I think a lot of people kind of are, if you do the math, the big contract he can get in free agency is 7 times 14. That's 98 million. By having the 8th year, the Hurricanes can beat that, and they've gone into a little over $100 million, and they've basically said, like, this is our staking point. And if you'll remember last year, they waited too long to get close to where Jake Gensel wanted them to go, and he decided to test free agency. This is not the case with Carolina. They've learned from that. They've come out strong. They've made a strong offer right away. But I think the biggest question is, what is Rantanen's timeline? That
Yeah.
becomes the number one thing. Is he going to be in position to give them an answer before next Friday? And if the answer to that is no, then how do the Hurricanes feel? Do they take their chances? Do they believe they can convince him? Do they say, you know what, we'll go for the cup and see what chips fall? So there's two big decisions here. First, Rantanen's, and second, the Hurricanes.
Now, let me just follow up quick in terms of, let's just say, for example, that the Canes decide, like, Rantanen doesn't give him an answer, and they decide they want to move him. Like, obviously he's a terrific player, and to be flipped a second time in the year is kind of tricky. I mean, I know there's already been retention. There could be retention again on what's left. I mean, how many realistically, how many players could there be for Rantanen if it comes to that?
EJ, if he's available, there's going to be a lot, because if Carolina is willing to hold 50%, he's a $2.3 million player.
Yeah.
I mean, who is not going to take a run at Mikko Rantanen at 2.3? And if we get to that point, and again, I stress it's an if, it probably gives Carolina their best chance to make a good deal, because there will be a lot of teams fighting over them. And as we always know from our grade 10 economic classes, the law of supply and demand is you always do better the more the demand there is with limited supply. So I don't want to say that Rantanen is holding up the trade deadline, because I don't believe that's true. But what I do think is happening, EJ and Bruce, is that there are some teams sitting here saying we better make sure we wait and are absolutely certain that he isn't available. Because if we find out he is available and we've already moved our best assets, it might cost us a shot at him. So I think there is this overall kind of holding pattern until we see what Rantanen decides to do. I mean, guys, I'll tell you, there's a lot of opinions out there, a lot of very different opinions. You talk to some people, they say they think the Hurricanes will up their offer to make sure that gets done if they need to. There are other people who say that they'll take their shot and take their shot with him and keep him. And there's other teams that think there's no way they keep him past March 7th if they don't have an answer.
Yeah.
And that was Colorado's choice, EJ.
Yeah.
They did not want to hold him past March 7th without an answer. So, there's a lot of opinions out there, and all we can do is let this play out.
Yeah.
But the first decision is his. The second decision is Carolina's.
Okay, there's so many players and so many good storylines here. I want to stay in the Western Canada area. What are they going to do? What's Vancouver going to do with Brock Boeser? I hear nothing about him being re-signed, and you don't hear rumors about him being traded, but something's got to be done.
You know, Bruce, I think with Besser, I think the issue there for the Canucks is term. I don't think they really want to go past 5 years. Now, when someone says they really don't want to go past five, I always wonder, okay, like if they could get to six, is there something with six that could work both ways? But I think the Canucks are in a situation where their preference is to stay around 5 years on Besser. The one thing I remember about Vancouver, Bruce, and you worked there, is they were nowhere with JT Miller, and then they decided they were going to get it done, and they got it done 2 days later. Kevin Lankinen, their talks were going nowhere with Kevin Lankinen. They decided they wanted to get it done. It got done in a day. So that's one thing about the Canucks. They could decide they want something done, and it gets done. But right now, I think there's an issue with term, and I believe the Canucks' preference is to not go past 5 years. Now, I think the thing right now is, they're in a playoff spot. It's close. Calgary's right behind them, and all of a sudden now, here comes Utah. Here comes Anaheim. There's other teams there. I think they want to make the playoffs. I don't think they want to wave the white flag. Um, I think they could potentially deal Besser, but I don't think they want to make their team worse, Bruce. So I think they're kind of managing these things. I don't think they want to go max term on Besser, but I don't think they want to make their team worse. So part of me wonders if they could move him and get something else. But I don't know that they're going to be able to bridge the overall contract situation, Bruce, unless Besser is willing to accept less term.
Agreed.
Elliotte, I want to go off the board a little bit with you to the Kraken,
Okay.
because they seem like they're going to be a seller. They have two interesting players to me in Brandon Tanev and Yanni Gourde. Now, Yanni Gourde's been dinged up. Maybe you have an update on the medical there, where he's at. But I would think that these guys, because they're kind of affordable players, they're guys that can really help you try to win in big moments. Yanni Gourde has already been part of that. Where are we with those two guys?
I think Tanev is very likely to be dealt. I think of all the players who could potentially be traded right now, I think Tanev would be at the top of the list, where I would be surprised if he didn't. The Gord situation, I think he probably gets moved out of their EJ. I know there's a bunch of teams that really like him, and I do think that there are a lot of teams calling and asking Seattle, okay, what's his health? What's his health? And as far as I can tell, right now, nobody's been told like he won't be able to play or anything like that. The biggest question I heard was, I think there was some talk internally they wanted to keep him. And so I think it's going to come down. Now, Seattle's going through some situations right now where they've got to determine sort of the long-term future of their front office. So that could inform these decisions. But I do think people who are there who want to keep them, I just don't know at the end of the day what the overall philosophy is going to be. I think Toronto was one of the teams that's interested in Gord, but I don't think they're the only one.
There's so many things going on in my head, so many teams going. But you know what?
Think about how Elliotte's got.
Yeah, I know. You got to be busy 36 hours a day. But let's take the LA Kings. Okay, they're just knocking on the door against Vegas for first in the Pacific. They've got the best home schedule. They got the best home record. Now, I got to believe they think that they can make some noise and some damage here. Are they looking to buy, and what are they looking for at this stage?
It's interesting you mentioned it, Bruce, because I was watching their game last night, and they came out like gangbusters in the third period, and they beat Vegas. And boy, does Byfield look good. I don't know how much he had 4 assists last night. I don't even know he's ever going to be a 100-point scorer, but boy, is that guy a horse. And I'll say this about them. I had a couple of people say to me today, they're going for a scorer. You have the board up there. I think Kempe is a heck of a player. I think he needs help. Fiala's been hot lately. I think they need help. Like you'll remember when they won their first Stanley Cup in 2012, they went out and they got Jeff Carter. They were the lowest scoring team in the NHL, and they went out and they won the cup. Now, I don't know that I'm going to be that bold to pick a repeat, but I do think they're looking for a score, and I've had a couple people tell me they are actively looking for a score. So I would expect them to make noise. And I think after a game like last night, where it came out after that Jim Hiller really challenged them and they rose to the challenge to beat a really good team. I think you reward. And I'll tell you guys something else too. I think there's a lot of players that came out of the Four Nation really hurt, really banged up. I don't think the Four Nations was better than anyone, except for maybe Jordan Binnington, than it was for Drew Doughty on Team Canada's roster. This is the one guy who didn't play a lot. I think now he's rounding into form. I thought he looked really good last night. I think the Four Nations is gonna really help Doughty and therefore really help at the Kings. I think they're gonna add a scorer, and I think they're really looking hard at who they can identify as that player.
All right, before we let you go, I want to get your take on the whole Seth Jones situation, because I think he's in the third year of an 8-year contract, $9.5 million. I was a big Seth Jones guy coming out of the draft. I did the World Juniors that year. He was terrific for Team USA. He was Nashville, then Colorado, or excuse me, Columbus, and then he ends up in Chicago by choice, really. I mean, he kind of ended up in Chicago, a team that, to me, was really clearly on the downside. And now a couple of years in, he's like to go somewhere else, and he'd like to go to a contender. Maybe he should have thought of that 3 years ago. I'm a fan of Seth Jones, but I'm not a fan of what I've seen over the last couple of years. Now, I guess if somebody trades for him, maybe he can get back on track. We've seen this before. But what do you make of this situation? Because that's a big number for a guy. Again, in my mind, when I watch him play, he is not playing anywhere near that number right now.
No, I agree with that. I mean, the thing is, I look at the minutes, right? And he's playing 24 and a half minutes on a team that's not very good. And you can be made to look bad in those situations. I'm a Seth Jones fan, but like I think you're right, EJ. Like I think there's a higher level there, and I think he'll get somewhere and he'll give the higher level. It's complicated. Like I would guess the number one team he probably wants is Dallas, and I think Dallas is looking for more help on the right side. But Dallas has a lot of contract situations they have to deal with, and like I've been told that there are teams that could take Jones right now and have kind of indicated that they might be willing to do it, but those are not contenders. Like contenders are always right at the cap. You know who I'm really wondering about, and especially if Matthew Tkachuk misses the rest of the regular season and we're still waiting an update. Boy, I'll tell you, Seth Jones in Florida, I think that would look really good. They're looking for a right shot D. Again, like to me, it all comes down to is what is Chicago willing to do here? Are they willing to take money? If they're not, what kind of contracts are they going to take back? What kind of return are they looking for? I think, Chicago understands that he wants to be traded, but you've got to protect your own interests, right? So what are you willing to do? But the two teams I really look at are Dallas and Florida, and I would be very curious to hear what Jones thinks about Columbus as a contender, because you heard Werenski say I'd love to have him back, and you heard Jones say he likes Columbus. That's not a contender like those other teams are, but they're having a hell of a year. I would be curious to know what he thought about them over the next few seasons.
Last one from me, Elliotte. I'd be remiss if I didn't get you on TV and didn't ask you about your hometown team. Are they going to do anything? The Leafs sort of poised, like they got some really good young juniors ready to come up. Are those guys in play? Are they going to go for the cup and go all in right now, or do you think they're going to be sort of a status quo kind of team?
No, I don't think they want to be status quo, Bruce. I think they're trying to determine how high a price they want to pay. Like they've got three assets I think that people really like, and one is their first round pick next year, and the other are the two kids you're talking about, Easton Cowan and Fraser Minton. And I just think that I think they have to decide how high they want to go in terms of price to be paid, because they don't have a lot of assets. They don't have a first round pick this year. Next year's draft is a really good draft. Those two kids are their top prospects. Like, they know if they want to shoot for the moon, it's going to be some combination of that. And I just think they're weighing it, Bruce. I think they're going to do something. The East is wide open. If their goaltending holds, I think they've got just as good a shot as anybody. And I think they feel that too. So I think they're going to wait a little bit here. Like, I'll tell you this, Bruce. Like, when I reported the other night that I think teams are saying, "Oh, could we unite the Shen brothers?" I like that's right up Toronto's MO. I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the teams thinking about that. But I think they know if they want to take a big swing, it's going to cost them one or two of those three assets, and they're weighing how much they want to do it and who it's for.
Yeah, it's such a balance, right? And you're right, Elliotte. I think this is the year you probably want to try to go for it because it does seem to be wide open. You're going to be a busy guy. Thanks so much for taking some time for us today. We appreciate it, and we'll be watching, we'll be listening, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Great to chat with you. Great to see you both.